start with where you ended before the break, Dr. Joe, which was to discuss about the need to create a new narrative for what our life looks like at 65 plus and onwards. So what are some of the misconceptions, let's say, about how we imagine life post-65? And why don't we even imagine it very often?
Yeah, quite often, because those stories are so compelling, they box in our imagination. Even think about the 65. 65 was chosen by Bismarck in Germany because he asked his actuaries, when do people die? And they said, about 55. Good, we will start paying pensions at 65, but there'll be a pension, but we don't have to pay out. So 65 is even made up. So it's largely those stories keep our imagination locked in.
And confined.
Yeah, and very confined. And we don't realize that they are malleable, that they're a social construction.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, Philippa, I know that NN Hellas actually looks at our imagination when it comes to our longevity, right? And it has this survey where you keep asking Greeks how they envision their lives then. Are there things that they're hopeful for? Are there things that they're fearful for? So what are some of the things that you've been seeing throughout the years about how Greeks think of that part of their lives?
Yes, and let me start by saying that, you know, longevity, and it was said in different words probably by previous speakers, it's not about adding years to life, it's about adding life to years. So living a meaningful life. And of course it can mean different things for many people, but at the end of the day, it's about having something to look after, something that matters to you. And for that, there have been identified 3 pillars. So you need physical health, you need mental health, and you need financial stability. Overall, Greeks, we're very optimistic, right? And we dream. And if I listened before to Dr. Gogo, so if we dream, that's a good sign. So they dream about living a long life. They dream actually about going beyond 100. So 103, I don't know why, but that's what they dream and imagine and hope for. And they dream a lot. They have aspirations. So 7 out of 10, they're saying that there's still enough time for me to do new plans. There's plenty of time. So they keep aspire and think. At the same time, they also feel prepared. I mean, half of them, and it depends. Do you look at the glass, you know, half full or half empty? Mm-hmm. And here is where a paradox comes and an anxiety or a concern comes, because they feel prepared, but if you ask them, it's, I think, 38% that say, I feel confident that I will have enough money to take me to 100 years old. And you have ages between 35 and 49 where stress, anxiety, and depression is really, really high. And it's actually the interplay between hopes and concerns that shapes how they view and their stance towards longevity.
You said something very interesting there, which is preparedness, and I know we discussed a little bit beforehand about preparedness versus planning, right? So there's the idea of planning for your life past 65 or closer to 80, 90 to 100, and being prepared for life at that stage. So can you talk a little bit about that difference? Yeah. What does preparedness actually look like?
We're encouraged to do a lot of planning, but planning, frankly, is like a grocery list or a food list. Until that food is in your cart, on your counter, or frankly on your plate, you're not eating. Preparedness for longevity is, have you thought about where you're going to live? Have you thought about how you're going to make new friends? Because I hate to be depressing, but as we age, there's a natural attrition, if you will, to friendship. Have you thought about what you're going to do? Not the big things like being a grandparent or going on travel, but have you set into motion what you're going to do on any given Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning? That's being prepared. It's about solutions versus aspirations.
And Philippa, when we talk about preparedness, how do you think the business world is sort of preparing for this new paradigm of longer living, right? And I'm particularly interested, obviously, in insurance, but also things like healthcare and financial services. How are they sort of changing to adapt to this new paradigm of life?
And there are 2 angles to see it, because one has to do with older people. Let's put 65 plus, just for to make a point. And where there we need to ensure that we help them continue being active in life, whatever they want to pursue. And then it's about the younger ages, where it's even more about preparedness and how they prepare, you know, from having the health, the mental health, and the financial stability to do that. So practically, you need to have, and if we take insurance as an example, you need to become a lifetime partner where you adjust the products, the services, and the solutions that you offer to each and every stage of your life. It starts probably with more financial literacy and start saving small if we talk about financial planning. From healthcare, it's more around preventive. It's more around mental well-being. And then for the older people, it's also about aging in place. So there are things that are changing, and that's the opportunity also that businesses have to adjust to that and become a lifetime partner.
That's a very interesting point, and to go back to the idea of change, I think our technology is radically redesigning things around us so fast, so it's also quite difficult to project how exactly will life look like when I get to 80, 90, or 100, right? So it's such a dynamic process. How does that factor into how we think of preparedness, both on an individual level, but also on a design level, on a state level?
We know in the psychology literature that people have a unique difficulty in envisioning their future self, if you will. And so as a result, it's kind of hard for us to plan, let alone prepare, because I don't know what I can't imagine what I would be at 80 or 85, let alone at 100. I would actually suggest this is where industry and to a degree government can play a role to start mapping out or anticipating what you could do and the like, so that people actually know what they're buying in retirement. You're not just buying financial security, you're buying an entire lifestyle. Every other life stage was pretty well mapped out by media, by business, by government, by tradition. You get to 65, you run out of narrative. So now we need to start creating that.
And to go beyond that, Philippa, do you think there's sort of an ethical dimension here? Because very often we talk about longevity, the access to longer life. For years, it's something that's been kind of confined in the imagination of wealthier individuals. And just a quick tangent, we recently had this incident, right, where you heard Putin and Xi talking about how, oh, we're going to live to 150. Like, we've thought of longevity as something confined to powerful people. But is there sort of an ethical dimension here to ensure that both the access to longer life, but also to a higher quality of life is something that we give across people and socioeconomic groups, etc.?
Absolutely, is a short answer to your question. I mean, if we make it, a topic which is a privilege for the few or for the ones that in this room, then I think we have failed, right? And societies need to understand that just living longer but without ensuring dignity, access to good health and financial stability, then this is not real progress, actually. So imagine, and let me give you some figures that have to do with Greeks overall. For example, do you know the percentage of people that have more than 3 months savings to live on? It's 35%. So 65% of the people, they can live on their savings for less than 3 months. And that's at an average. And 15% of the population they believe that they can handle an unexpected major expense that might come in their life. Now project this to lower socioeconomic groups in our country. When disparities persist, then the risk for those in the lower socioeconomic groups is much bigger, for poor health, for no access, no financial inclusion. So there's an ethical topic there that we need to address, and this involves every stakeholder. So it has to do with governments, with businesses, with communities, with NGOs, so with everyone, that we need to ensure that it's not a topic about few, it's a topic about the full community.
It's a long-standing inequality, if you will, that since antiquity, wealthier people had access to clean water, better food, cleaner air, sewerage facilities, if you will, and as a result, they tended to live longer. I would say it's a long-standing inequality that is the next step in the longevity economy. Yeah. How do we level that out for all?
But when we had a discussion for the press the other day, you said something that was quite interesting here, which is that though historically this is what we've been seeing today, you do see perhaps less affluent populations that maybe live an agrarian life in the countryside, have access, because perhaps they've gained, some of these technologies have become more affordable, but sometimes you have these populations living longer than wealthier populations that live in the city. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
We don't just see that in Greece or Italy, Spain. We also see it in the United States, for a number of reasons. One, we see social connection in rural areas tighter than they are in urban areas. In urban areas, you have lots and lots of people, but we're alone together. Versus in rural areas, those social connections are vital to being able to survive, a bad storm or something like that, so it's strong. But the other issue is, and I think you touched on in terms of having enough money in retirement, stress is a killer. And the stress of being able to be financially secure or doing everything you need for your family, rural areas, there's a certain expectation that is bounded, so there's a little bit less stress than there is out in the streets here.
So we should all move to the countryside. I mean, I'd encourage it. Yeah. I know the other thing that you talk about a lot, Dr. Joe, is kind of finding purpose in that later stage of our lives. So can you talk a little bit about that? What does that process kind of entail for us, and how can we find purpose at 80, 90, or 100?
So purpose is one of those words that really bothers me, because I'm going to play a word game. Purpose sounds so high. It sounds like the top of Maslow's pyramid. It's like, well, by 70 I'll cure cancer and I've got a purpose. No. I would like to say that people need to think not about purpose, but mattering. Do you matter to someone else? And it could be, do you matter to a grandchild? Do you matter to your neighbors? Do you matter to a spouse? Waking up every day knowing that you matter in some big or small way. Purpose, grant you, there's a lot of us that will pursue that, but I think that adds to the stress. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I've got my money, I know where I'm going to live, but now I need my purpose. Well, chill.
Yeah. And do you see some of that purpose finding in the questions, I wonder, or in the responses that Greeks?
Yes. So what they're saying is the hygiene factors is physical health, mental well-being, and financial security, and purpose. Yeah, the word I know, but they're not thinking about world peace. They're thinking about having relationships with some people, and building on the social component of longevity. And probably characterizes us Greeks is this intergenerational support that we have plays an important role in managing a bit the stress that people live. So more than 7 out of 10 of the people are willing to support in any shape or form, from financial to any other kind, their family. Yeah. At the same time, they have a concern on whether, when they will be in need, whether this can happen. And this is influenced from one hand from the fact that, well, we're not having children, right, so you will not have someone to support you. But it also comes probably for a culture that is changing, or a stress that is increasing without, hopefully, real roots.
We're seeing more of a global culture than a Greek culture or an American culture. And not having children, believe it or not, is a financial issue. It's not about, oh, I don't have kids, I don't have to pay for college or whatever it is. It's also, if you don't have children, the caregiver after your spouse is most likely your oldest adult daughter. So now you have to start planning into your retirement plans, how much does it cost to replace the oldest adult daughter? Probably. All those services and supports and the like. Probably more than we can afford.
And hopefully think about the son as well, just to bring the gender
bring
equality
the gender
topic here as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll take out the trash for you.
I mean, so that's an interesting tangent to kind of shift to what this older population actually means socioeconomically, if you will. And I want to ask Philippa, what do you think that sort of means for things like maybe healthcare systems, intergenerational equity? Like, if we have an older population out there, how does that kind of affect these calculations? And
let's put, let's say, some numbers to understand the context, and especially from a pension system perspective. So first of all, our population pyramid will be a little bit inversed. So 1/3 of the population by 2070 will be above 65 years old. At the same time, we do know that births are decreasing. In the 10-year period from 2011 to 2021, they decreased by almost 30%. What does that mean? While in 1970, we had for every person above 65, 7 working persons, this today is less than 3, and by 2050, it will be 1.5. That speaks on itself. You don't need to be an actuary or anything to understand that this is not getting us anywhere. And here is probably where a bit of the intergenerational dilemma comes into place, or the question, because while societies need to ensure that we support older people to continue doing what they love, what they dream, or anything, we don't overburden younger population in order for them to do that. So there's a dilemma, if you wish, there. For healthcare system, as we've said before, for example, it needs to become more on preventive healthcare, focusing quite a lot on mental well-being, because that's important as well. But also, if we think how it changes for the older people, then we're talking about, we need to think about treating more chronic diseases, or we need to think about long-term caring, or people who just want to stay home and they need some support. They might need teleconsultation. So different things. So they shape what we know so far. That means, if we look on the flip side of the challenge that brings, this is an opportunity for us to change the systems how they are now, if we want to adjust and help people not just live longer, but live happier lives when they are old.
And this is not just a Greece phenomena. Let me give a data point for everyone. By 2047, worldwide, there will be more people of retirement age than children. This has never happened before, so we really are, shall we say, in a stage of new ground.
Yeah.
As demographers like to say, demography is destiny, and the destiny here is much grayer than it was ever before.
So Philippa already mentioned about how this is also an opportunity to redefine sort of what these industries look like, and a lot of your work has been revolving around, looking at these aging populations not just as a set of challenges, but also opportunities, and sometimes economic opportunities. And you've done all of this work on longevity hubs. So tell us a little bit about that idea and how Greece could potentially fit in that paradigm.
It is kind of funny that without question we all look at aging, or most of us look at aging as a problem. But if somebody came up to you in the middle of the night and said, I'm going to grant you 37 more years of life than you would have planned, you would have thrown a party. Yeah. But now we're living 37, 40 years longer than we did in 1900, and all of a sudden it's a problem. And so it's not just about their buying power, it's also about, this is an opportunity to rethink life stages across the board. So longevity hubs. So Lucio Quinto, a colleague, and I at MIT AgeLab, and I put together a book on longevity hubs where regions around the world are starting to find that governments, public-private partnerships, industry are coming together to realize, wait a minute, this aging population, it can be a business or it can be something innovative. So, where might Greece play? Now look, I'm biased for family reasons, but I think that Greece could own the notion of wellness, the food, the lifestyle, the environment. You've got financial services here. You've got all these things that could come together to start to create not just a brand, but a lifestyle that is built around Athens or Greece. And the idea of longevity hubs is not just to serve the people where you live, that's where you start, but to get the model right so you begin to export it to the world. In Boston, we are a financial capital, we are a biotech capital, and we're an academic capital. We're coming together to pull that together as a leverage point to rethink how we age in the future.
Very interesting. And I wonder, Philippa, if you had any thoughts on this. Would you also envision Greece as potentially being able to, create this ecosystem? Are the partners, the systems there? Could we create Greece as an emerging hub?
It's a lovely idea, right? And there are so many things that you can think that can come together to contribute to that, from public spaces to support services to, you name it. It's like a full new economy being created there. And as Joe said, we have some ingredients there to help that. So
the rest of the world's just discovered the Mediterranean diet, and it's been here for thousands of years.
Come on.
And to sort of, also point at a problem, because I know you do a lot of work on design, I think some of our spaces aren't designed for older people in Greece. Yeah. And having just returned to Athens after spending a lot of time abroad, I realized this is not a city that is meant for the elderly to walk around really easily. Right. So I think that's also a problem, is when you have a set design and you need to sort of rethink how do we sort of intervene on top of this design.
And the beauty of that is not to motivate politicians and taxpayers to do it for the, quote, older people. If you make a place that is safer, more accessible, more engaging, that improves it for everyone. A person pushing a baby carriage will thank you for a curb cut that an older person in a wheelchair needs. So making the world, shall we say, age ready, makes it ready for all.
Totally.
Yep.
I mean, I had this thought when I was walking my dog, and I was like, now that I walk my dog, I can understand what an older person feels like when they, but you know, obviously, yeah. I think you kind of lift all boats with that, right? Okay, so let's shift gears now a little bit. Let's go to some more, I guess, abstract or philosophical questions, if you will. And you know, we talked a little bit about this already with the idea of purpose, but I wonder if you could both share your takes on what you think a good life at 100 years old kind of looks like. Paint a picture for us. What does that look like? Philippa, do you want to go first? Or?
What can I do?
You're it.
So, if I close my eyes and I imagine a picture, I mean, the picture is quite abstract as well. I see a smile. So I think a good life at an age of 100 is a smile of a person, is the life of a person that has reasons to smile. And it might be very different things for people. And I don't know what would make me smile if I am to reach 100. So it's important to ensure that we sort of redefine our purpose or what matters to us, and continuously, finding reasons to make us smile.
That's actually, I like that a lot, and it's very close to what I would call, at 100 years old, do you know the little, I call them little joys.
Yeah.
We often talk about the big things, that, what are your goals in retirement? Travel, grandchildren, fine. Those are the out there. I'll give you an example. I like to garden, I like to cook, but one of the things that makes me smile is an ice cream cone. And here's two questions that I want all of you to think about in terms of your own retirement planning. Do you know the little things that make you smile? In my case, ice cream cone. But here's the second part is, do you have access to those things easily? You don't have to call somebody to say, oh, you'll schedule 2 weeks from now to get an ice cream cone, or bother your adult daughter to, make sure that you can go over and do that. So smiling, and do you know the little joys that will make 100 years quality years?
I love that phrase because it's a common Greek phrase we often say.
Little joys?
Little joys in life.
I've seen many movies where all phrases are Greek phrases.
There we go.
Of course.
Kimono comes from the Greek word kimonan, and so on and so forth. One of the things we talked about in our interview before this fireside was also how I think a big driver of Smile is being able to talk and converse, and not necessarily just with people that are maybe the same age as you are, right? But across generations. Now, if we live longer, we're going to have more generations. Right. I think already with sometimes 4 or 5 you see in the workforce, it's really hard for them to gel together. Yeah. So how do we create a society and a system where all of these multiple different generations have a way to communicate with each other? They have the same references. They have the same respect, so to speak.
So I teach a course on global aging in the built environment, and it is quite popular to think about the future of senior housing or older adults that can live over there. I think the first thing we have to think about is spatial, and that is that we have everyone working and living together across the generations. I know the senior housing community will not like me when I say this, but the idea of being set apart is more a penalty than a reward for older age. So I think having young people and older people have to cross paths on a regular basis. And for those who are able to continue working, or even if it's part-time, and I say able to continue working because, look, the 3 of us on this couch, we get paid by driving a keyboard or running off at the mouth. Retiring, for those that are truck drivers, farmers, and bricklayers, that's a requirement. Their body gives out. But if we can start to create spaces where everyone can continue to work or volunteer part-time together, I think those conversations and those connections will happen.
That's very interesting. And Philippa, do you see some of that in your own sort of workplace as well? I'm sure you employ multiple generations.
Yes, and it's a matter, as Joe said, so it's a matter of ensuring that there are opportunities or instances that they can get together. So it's only through, interaction that you can cultivate that. And that in a business can take many forms. Then in the society overall, it has to do from public spaces, or apart from, whether you have housing, let's say, separate, etc. I mean, do you have public spaces that also provide for activities or anything that can be of interest to different generations? And that, will give an opportunity to interact.
A society does not have a space for everyone is not a society. And that's one of the greatest challenges we have.
I was partly prompted to ask this question because I'm just a millennial, and very often I think of myself as a tired millennial.
We tell millennial jokes now?
No, because, I think that changes are so fast. Sometimes I think even with the Gen Zers, let alone the Gen Alphas, I don't have the same references anymore. I think
tell us about it.
Yes. There we go. No, but I think, you said this too, I think you've said this, like, we're all aging together, so to speak. Right. Things are changing so fast. We're all kind of...
And by the way, things are moving so fast. I mean, think about the fact that the iPhone came out, what was it, 2007 or thereabouts? Is that technology is moving so quickly, and I think I was teasing you earlier, is that, at least in my lab, we're finding that the older technology user is 30. Because the technology is moving so quickly, Gen Z is getting tired of waiting for you to figure out how to do a selfie.
No, I mean, sometimes as journalists, we have to do these vertical videos and reels, and there's this thing called the millennial pose.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we're all guilty of it. Yeah. Gen Z is adamant about pointing it out. Can't wait for Gen Alpha to come.
Yeah, that's going to be the revenge. Yeah.
My kids, they're Gen Z, and they keep complaining about Gen A, and I'm like, I haven't really understood, the previous generations. I mean, Gen A for me, it's like too much.
I personally thought that the fertility rate had dropped so low that we were at the end of the alphabet. That was it.
Keep going. There's what, 24 letters in the Greek alphabet, right? So plenty of generations still to go. Let's end this with a question about balance, right? To bring some of the big Greek quotes, everything in moderation, everything is about balance. How do we maintain that sense of balance of maybe being productive, being happy, being social, being healthy? What does that sort of look like when we're 100 years old? How do we keep that balance in our lives?
I can
You're
start.
You're going to stick me with it.
Well, if we think about work, it has to be flexible and meaningful. If you think about health, it's about being managed proactively. If you think about leisure, it needs to be lifelong and fulfilling. And purpose, we need to be on our toes to continuously redefine it as we move along. Now, the thing is also how, apart from taking care of each and every aspect, you keep the balance. I think balance is always a topic to discuss at every stage in life that you are. So let's keep that in mind. So while we strive to have every ingredient, let's say, for example, as I've described, balance, I think, on its own tells quite a lot on what we need to do.
And by the way, that approach to balance and even the notion of well-being, the word well-being is getting overused, but balance, I think, is a better way of doing it. And that's a very, especially from the ancient Greeks, that's a very Greek concept that should be packaged up as a strategic advantage for Greece around business and a story of older age. The other part about balance, though, I think we can learn a lot from people who've turned 100 successfully. And a study was done a number of years ago on centenarians. What do you think the first thing is that a person who's 100 reads in the newspaper?
Oh.
Yeah, so, it's funny, younger people go, well, obituaries.
Yeah.
Do you know the ones that report a high quality of life? They read the comics. It's the first thing.
I know what I'll do differently by tomorrow.
So yeah, that balance is about, you were talking about moderation, everything in moderation, including moderation.
Including moderation. I hope I had a balanced moderation.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Joe and Philippa, thank you so much. It was a wonderful discussion.
Thank you very much.
Really went wide, but also really deep.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Philippa.